It's definitely set crazy high on the idle. It's idling about 1500 right now, but she is running. To get it going, I had to swap the stock coils back on. So I think Jesse is right. The triggers for the 95, 96 ECU are different even when you flip the inverted CAS. So this wiring, which is done for a 1G, we thought would work on a 2GB CAS if we inverted the CAS signal in link, but that wasn't the case. So I proved that by switching back to the stock coils. If I wire it as a standard, same ECU, same CAS, everything does exactly what it did with the coil on plug. If I wire it with the 97 CAS and a 96 ECU wiring schematic for the spark plug order, it fires right up, runs good. We did replace our ground plugs with these 2-log ones. You know, I've replaced the stock ones back here, which are just garbage. Yeah, they're pretty frayed and corroded, split up pretty badly. So we had tried replacing those with a HKS kit, but that kit, the wiring is just too small. And this morning, when we were troubleshooting our no start issue, we used this one. You can see this one is quite a bit darker blue, and that's because it actually melted and nearly started a fire. And you can see right in there where it's actually completely gone out. What looks like 6-AUG wire here is actually a lot smaller. There's basically an 1/8 inch thick insulation on this. It's just garbage. So that's probably the only product I've ever had that I would really honestly rate a 0-star rating. We are definitely dripping oil here, so I'm going to shut it off. Ooh. Alright, yeah, we're dripping some oil there. It looks like the turbo drain maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure how much you can see, but yeah, right there. It's coming down pretty hard from the turbo. So my guess is that drain plug seal is just not as good as I hoped. But you know, leaks and stuff like that we knew we'd have to shake out. That's a shame though. It looks like we lost about 1/8 of a quart. Quite a bit of fluid there. At least we caught it before it ran dry. But that's the state of things, guys. I know my water pipe O-ring leaks. That's got to be replaced before June 16th for the dyno day, which means likely this turbo has to come back off and we have to do the boost leak testing all over again. But it looks like we've also got an oil leak at the turbo, and I'm looking closer here, and I don't think that's actually the O-ring. Give me a second for the drain. There we go. Oh yeah, we've got bigger problems. It looks like, is that coolant there, or is that oil? I think that's coolant. So it looks like our coolant line is also leaking. Yes, that's the coolant feed. So that crush washer is not sealing up. So it looks like the oil drain down there. I'm not totally surprised. Those are all new lines, so they're probably not crushed down enough, or those crush washers just don't work. So we'll take a look at those next time I'm down. I got to get heading back to Chicago. My train leaves at like 6 a.m. So I gotta go finish packing. But car runs. Big step forward. The coil on plug will have to be rewired, but that's not too big a deal. And we'll have to fix our leaks, and then we'll still have to go forward with tuning for speed density and testing that Omni 4-bar, which broke apart on me when we put the compression fitting on there, so it might not be any good, but we have the spare GM in the back. So there's an update. We really haven't made too many videos, largely because I've been moving to get things done, and filming just slows things down. We did switch to a Greddy blow-off valve. Was originally going to run an HKS blow-off valve, couldn't get it to seal right. Really didn't care for how it was adapted. I've got a proper BSP fitting for this now. They originally sent me the wrong one, and so I used that metric adapter there, or MPT to BSP adapter. So hopefully that'll fit better and not look as goofy on there. Trying to think of what else we have changed. Oh, we did switch to a new J-pipe. That's a CX Racing J-pipe. That goes on down straight into the lower pipe for the VR Speed Factory front mount. Doing that actually completely eliminates the lower L hose, kind of L-shaped hose that goes down there that normally connects there. So we're actually about half a foot shorter pipe routing. The downside to that, though, is that when I planned for my braided lines, that was where the source for my wastegate was. So my wastegate is back to using just a standard vacuum hose for now until I can get around to doing something about it. It's not a big deal. Basically, we'll just put a fitting on there, or possibly just upgrade the boost controller or the boost gauge to an electronic one, like a AAM one that uses a thread-in fitting, and then we can repurpose that line. Basically, the way that'll work is I have this Red Horse fitting up here, and this basically has a T built into it. You can't see it because it's on the upside down. There it is. Okay, so it's got that little MPT port in it, and so we could put that into the vacuum line on the FPR, and then I could just run my boost gauge right here. And then it would just run an electronic wire in there instead of a air wire. Which would actually be a little bit more reliable as far as blowing off hoses and boost leaks go. But yeah, leaks aside, this thing is ready. We could put it on the dyno now and tune it for the 14B with the stock 450cc injectors. I really want to get my Walbro 255 installed though. And along that lines, we've actually picked up a spare front wheel drive fuel sending unit, and I've modified it for a bulkhead fitting. And there's the end of our 8AN line. So we're actually going to run an 8AN line dropped in under here all the way to a Fuel Lab fuel filter that's going to be where the stock fuel filter is, just underneath and to the right of the battery in that little gap. It's hard to see. It's kind of hard to see, but it's down by where those wires dip down. Once we get that in, that will go up to a 10AN line, short route line. The reason for that is just because I got the Fuel Lab filter on an open box deal, so I got it super cheap. So we'll run a 10AN line up here, and I've actually got a Magnus rail that's going to go in. The Magnus rail already has my PTE 880s installed, so that will replace the stock injectors, and then it will run using this 6AN line back to the AFPR, so we'll just repurpose that line. But we will get rid of the stock rail and the AN adapter down there. So all that is purchased and sitting and waiting, ready to go. But before we do any of that, we need to get the things that are already installed sorted, get the leaks fixed, and basically get the car running as is. But as is, I've got 3 weeks to get it shook loose, drivable, and we can get it on the dyno. After that, it's just, can I get more of my mods on and get the most out of the experience? Alright, so now that everything's off, I can go ahead and do another quick follow-up on some of the other stuff that we've changed. We pulled the exhaust off, and we put on a BS Fab bumper exit, which is probably the biggest change. We put on a 14B instead of the 13T, so this engine's definitely off of an RVR based on everything we found that's on it. We put an FP intake on it. We've had all of our intercooler lines, our intercooler hoses, powder coated. We've fixed most of the wiring for speed density on SetiLink, but SETI mods, but we've also switched to DSM Link because I got a killer deal on that. I've also had the Evo 3 Relay RVR intake manifold powder coated, and while it was off, we drilled and tapped it for MPT fittings, which has allowed us to run braided lines to all of our boost sources, exception being the wastegate right now because we did delete a pipe that we didn't plan on. The FP intake manifold also has a 10AN line going back down to our Gamble Garage big catch can, which has 8AN lines running up to this powder coated valve cover. Now this is not my original valve cover. My original valve cover is actually still being powder coated and adapted by a buddy. So this is just a placeholder one. that I got cheap. And the reason I got it cheap is because in addition to having no baffles, it's been cracked and welded, which has damaged the powder coat. But that's underneath the spark cover and you don't really see it. So other than having to empty my catch can more often, it shouldn't be a huge deal, and no more than I drive the car, that really shouldn't bother me. But eventually we will put my original JDM valve cover back on. We've also put on the B&M trans cooler. A lot of this stuff, if you're following us on Instagram, you've seen. Instagram, and if you're a part of my Facebook, if you friended me on Facebook, basically. Those things are already been there, but if you're just following on YouTube, you haven't seen those. Let's see. We did trim the F-mic, the inlet on it. There it is. We cut back almost 2 full inches on that outlet here. And the reason we did that is because with my old exhaust, it just did not clear. So it kept banging into it. And now it fits really, really nicely. And of course, it's not really an issue with the BS Fab side exit, but I do still want to keep some distance there. So now you can see it runs nice and evenly. And the other problem I was having with this cheap, it's actually an eBay knockoff VRSF. So I won't say it's the VRSF one is bad, but the eBay ones require some fitment. The L pipe that ran up here originally ran underneath here, and on the automatics your roll stop is there, so that pipe took a beating pretty bad too. One thing we did have when we put this guy in, and you can see my that's probably the rustiest spot on this car. We did have a problem with it running really hot when we first put this F-mic in, and so what I did was shroud it out by going and getting some aluminum stripping at the hardware store and just riveting it in to the bottom here to make a seal along the bottom, and there's just some under doormat here to help seal it up tighter. And actually dropped an X-Acto knife between here, so now I gotta fish that out. I did that this morning. Then we cut aluminum up here to recreate the factory shroud. And the reason I did that is because by the time I cut the factory shroud enough to make these things fit, they were just flimsy and really didn't work. And so these ones are actually riveted in place, and they're just a much better fit. With those 2 shrouds in place, when the fans kick on now, they're actually strong enough that they'll take those blue shop racks I'm using, and they'll actually suck them straight up into here, which is pretty cool. When we did do this, I did cut the bumper support. A lot of people just pull it off. I didn't like taking that out because it affects your low-speed collisions. Cutting it like that also affects your low-speed collisions, but not as much as just removing it completely. What else have I changed that hasn't really been documented? Oh, we're now running a 1G NA throttle body, which let us get rid of the flanged elbow. So now we're just running a big coupler. It's also a little bigger than the one we had. Which means that we're now running that straight piece of intercore hose there, or intercore pipe, which has the bung in it for the IAT. That started because we had a little mishap welding the bung onto the flange, but I'm actually a lot happier with this setup. Underneath my laptop here, sorry I had that connected to ACM link. Let me set this somewhere where it's not going to get oil on it. There we go. Underneath my laptop, you've already seen the Gamble Garage stuff. One thing that normally happens with these automatics is that you have to bend your dipstick. However, what I ended up doing is swapping to a 3000 GT dipstick. They use the same transmission with a shorter dipstick, and it just clears, and the only thing you have to bend back then is the handle for your finger. And you don't actually have to do that, it just clears my pipe a little better, and my pipe is a little bit shifted off because of the setup up there. But that's much, much easier to use. So we covered B&M, all that, mods to the 255. I think that about gets it, guys. Oh, an Innovate wideband. Yeah, we installed an Innovate wideband. I'm using it headless, so there's no actual gauge in here. I had planned on running an AAM wideband, which you see right there, but when we fished it through, the harness actually broke. And rather than buying a new harness, I decided to get the wideband I wanted in the first place, which was the Innovate. So we're running the LC2. And that's headless, but it does get logged in link, so it's good enough. And I have the option to upgrade and add a gauge later if I want. And really, for my driving style, I don't really like the flashy lights on the gauges, so I think that's going to be more convenient. I believe that covers... Oh, I had my FP manifold ceramic coated as well. We're now running our Megan O2 exhaust O2 housing. Couldn't run that with the old one-piece exhaust, which we've since sold off to a guy who picked up a completely stock 2G. So he got a little upgrade about it, and we dropped off about 50 pounds and got to use some of our nicer stuff. I think that's it. We've got, when we pull that water pipe off to change the O-rings, we can either swap out the bracket back there to let the 2G belt fit properly. You can see it's all hacked on there right now. Or I've got a shorter one that should just correct the issue with the JDM bracket. That's a minor change. I think that's it, guys. I think that's everything I've done that you haven't seen. Oh, the pusher fan. There's a pusher fan behind there, and that was because we were having issues with the fans melting up here. And I think that ended up being that my original FP manifold cracked really bad. And we don't know if it cracked before we put on the F mic or after, but putting it on definitely didn't help. So this is actually a newer FP manifold than the one I had. Basically, another buddy didn't install his, so he sold me it, and then I sent it into Boosting Performance and had them ceramic coat it. Trying to think of what else I've changed. Phenolic spacers. There we go. We have phenolic throttle body spacers and intake manifold spacers. Basically, the intake manifold and stuff was already off. It's about the same price to buy a spacer as it is to buy a gasket, so I went ahead and went with those. The throttle body spacer is kind of iffy if it really does anything. People say the intake manifold gasket does lower your intake temperatures a little bit. I don't know. Again, it's the same price as the new gasket I had to buy anyway, so... In the car, we are working on a couple mods. Yeah, they're pretty common stuff. In the car, I've switched from the gray seats in the back to these black seats in the front. Picked those up from a buddy at the shootout when he upgraded to black ones with power seats. I actually prefer the manual seats because they're lighter. We've already installed our black dash. I have a black center console sitting in the back somewhere. This door panel, I have not edited the films for yet, but I believe I filmed most of me gutting it down and rebuilding it. There is this speaker panel here, it doesn't like to clip in, so I gotta figure out how I'm gonna fix that issue. But I did the black and gray option here is completely custom, whatever. It's OEM parts that are swapped around. So you can't buy them like that, but you can make them like that pretty easily. I don't know. Yeah, I still have the gray quarter panels back here. I've got black ones floating around there. Yeah, black ones floating around right there. So we're going to have black panels. We have the dog bench that you've seen before if you're watching the site. So I still need to find a black backrest. Otherwise, pretty much everything from the knees up will be black in this car. From the knees down will mostly be gray. Probably stick to gray sidewalls there. I think I have black ones, but I think it'll look cleaner with gray, with the gray undersides. I have black kick skirts here. Don't know if I'll change those out or not. So yeah, that's about all the black parts you can get. My top is still cut. Somebody knifed my top at one point. 2 points actually. It's got 2 separate stabs from 2 separate vandalism attempts. I think the second one was a theft attempt, but they tried to break into my unlocked car. Another story. The Joy parking in Chicago. I think that's it. I think that's actually it. Okay. Alright guys, hopefully I'll get all this edited and uploaded. You guys can see a good update on where we're at. There's a tool I've been looking for all day. Take care, guys.